So the results are in. Nigel, the winner. What's your reaction to what happened overnight?
Good morning. We're delighted with what's an outstanding result. And Nigel secured some 63% of the votes, 1,000 votes more than he got in the July 2024 general election. And bearing in mind that turnout was down at 44%, which you expect lower turnouts in by-elections, to actually get more votes is a remarkable demonstration of faith by the Clacton constituents, who, despite everything that's been thrown at Nigel and reform recently, they quite rightly have said, we want more Nigel, not less Nigel, thank you very much. And I think that's a very, very clear message that the establishment need to listen to.
The people of Clacton, though, had never said they wanted less Nigel. There had never been a petition signed to say, get out, go away. They'd never called for the by-election themselves. So was any of this necessary?
It was all necessary because, of course, the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner was investigating, and the establishment had already basically concluded that he was going to be guilty. The old presumption of innocence until proven guilty had gone out the window. And Nigel quite rightly said, I'm not going to tolerate that. I'll take it to the good people of Clacton. And it's a remarkable commitment of confidence, of faith in Nigel. And we're delighted. We're going to push forward. We'll be announcing more policies over the coming weeks in the run-up to our conference at the beginning of September, and onwards and upwards. And we're beginning to go back up in the polls, whilst Labour failed to stop the boats, failed to stop dangerous killers and serious violent offenders from leaving prisons. I mean, actually, what I call the Burnham Bunkum is soon being found out, just a few weeks into his premiership.
You say about the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner investigation, and part of the reason for calling the by-election, you just said there, was that. Well, that's not gone away. That restarts. If anything, the website will be updated imminently to say that the suspension of that investigation has ended, and it continues as it was. So I kind of come back to this point. The things that you're kind of pushing against, railing against, those pressures, those external questions, that accountability, those demands for answers, none of that's gone away.
Outrageously, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has said she'll stand the candidate in the second by-election. In other words, she basically, and others, are sort of essentially assuming that he's guilty of an offence. And the reality is that the other main parties, they cowardly bottled it from this election and didn't have the courage to show up. And I think the idea that it would be a second by-election after such a clear demonstration of support for Nigel, who's now got even more data about where his support is, I mean, it's just laughable. It would just be another humiliation for a Tory party that's been reeling from terrible results recently.
You started all of this by-election process with Nigel saying that this was kind of reform against the establishment. You have used the word establishment a couple of times here. And I just kind of want to kind of question this because, with respect, you are a multi-millionaire property CEO who's been a parliamentarian in London and also in Europe. You're defending a guy that's led 3 political parties, who's been an elected politician for more than 2 decades, who himself is a multimillionaire who got a load of cash from a friend who's a billionaire. He got so much cash it would take the average worker over 120 years to earn that amount of cash that was said to be a free gift. And you guys are saying you're not the establishment. This argument, Richard, doesn't hold water. It just doesn't hold water anymore. People see through it, surely.
Of course it does, because we are leading a party that is a disruptor party that didn't exist 6 or 7 years ago, that has come from behind and is taking on and disrupting and has overtaken the 2 main parties who ruled the roost for 100 years.
So you've overtaken the establishment, therefore surely you're the establishment.
The reason the establishment don't like it is because we're winning, because we're coming up with policies to stop the boats, to stop mass low-skilled immigration, to scrap net stupid zero, to cut wasteful spending, to keep dangerous prisoners in jail. These are the policies that the British people want, and they're sick and tired of gutless politicians not having the courage to tell it as it is.
If I had said to you, you weren't the establishment, you would have pointed to the 350 polls that you repeatedly referenced, saying that you led in. You also pointed to Binface being the establishment. Well, he kind of looked like it a little bit last night because he won 1 in 4 of the vote. What do you make of that?
What I make of that is that the uniparties of Labour and the Tories and the Lib Dems, who didn't have the courage to stand a candidate, they were rude and discourteous to the constituents of Clacton. And they basically asked those constituents, if you don't like Nigel, then you've got to vote for the bin. In other words, those parties have put themselves in the bin. And I think that shows all you need to know.
Just finally, Nigel didn't turn up at the count. He didn't turn up at the declaration because he said that there was questions around security. Essex police say there were no incidents or issues at the by-election on Thursday or overnight. Where's the truth in this? Because the returning officer said there was no issues with security. The police say there were no issues with security. So what does Nigel know that they didn't?
Nigel's security team are tasked with keeping him safe, secure and alive. And their assessment, taking everything into account, and taking into account Nigel would love to have been at the count. He'd have loved to have received that good news and that result in person. There's no one who believes more in the propriety of that process. But ultimately, it's their job to keep him safe, and they assessed that they couldn't guarantee that. And of course, it's one of those regrettable facts of where we're at. You know, we have in recent weeks, tragically and horrifically, had one of our close friends, senior politician, murdered, and we've had the truth come out about an alleged firebombing in Nigel's home last year. So you will understand, and your viewers and listeners will understand, that we're very cautious about issues around safety and security for obvious reasons.
They surely would, and I guess their next assumption, their next question would be, will you share that evidence that Nigel's security team say they have with Essex Police?
Obviously not, because the whole point of having a security team who are carrying out intelligence from a variety of sources is that, you know, that has to be its own secure judgment. The last thing you do is give your enemies
wouldn't share information that you say is a credible threat against the leader of your party with the police force of Essex, the part of the country where he is the MP for. You're saying obviously not. You would not share.
With the greatest of respect, we're literally just 6 days from when the Metropolitan Police and the counter-terrorism have had to apologise for not properly investigating a serious incident at Nigel's home last year. So in the nicest possible way, I'm going to trust Nigel's security team more than I trust any police force or anybody else.
With that, we're out of time. But Richard Tice, good to see you. Appreciate you sharing your time.